All right, here we go. This is part two. Just a reminder, we're working mostly from a manual for writers. So if you haven't picked that up, that's going to be a lot more detailed what you're going to get here. And we're looking at the second part here. So far we asked three major questions, which is what is your topic, and why you want to study into it. We had the because, and then the so that, which is, I want to help people understand such and such. Now, after you've established that, if you can get a topic and you can answer those questions successfully and comfortably, you might want to elaborate on that a little bit and ask yourself, at least on that last question, the so what question. You say, well, I want to help people understand this or that, and then, imagine having that conversation with somebody and they say, well, so what? Why does that even matter? Then if you can answer that question, develop a little bit further, at least you have a deeper understanding and more of a direction on exactly what you want to do. So something that might help. Now this is going to, we're going to pretty much move from our topic to our question to our thesis. So, and this is going to help you understand your thesis a little bit more thoroughly and really prepare you to be able to write something like a proposal, have your historiography done. Anyways, this is a real basic overview on that. So, we're going to start off with the first thing, which is the topic. So, topic. And I want you to think of that as a, let's circle that, the examination. Whoops, that's not going to be my E. The examination of your topic. So here we're going to ask a few questions to examine exactly your understanding of it. So we will question the topic. And really this is going to be getting into the what you understand I'm just going to leave it at that. Understanding your motivation behind the topic. This is hopefully going to be bringing an awareness to our kind of preconceived notions, our bias, if you will, which is always important for us to understand when investigating any topic. So, now, ask yourself, what do you know? What do you know about the topic or the subject? So usually if you have a good understanding, if you don't have a good understanding on the subject, it's probably not the best thing for you to hop into, especially for those of us that are doing this for a class and we've got a time period to work with, a time frame, some due dates. You want to do something that you've got at least a grounding in, some familiarity in, so that you have some resources that you know you can go to and really begin to hop into the subject. So, what do you know? And then you can write down exactly what you know about the subject and the opinions and whatnot, which is what brings us to the second part, which is, do you have an opinion? Whoops. Opinion. So, do you have an opinion on the subject? What is that opinion? You should be able to answer this question fairly simply and quickly. So, if we're talking suffrage and women's rights, if we're talking civil rights, what are the things that you know about this? What are the major events? And were these things good? Were these bad? Were these things that needed to happen? Really, really important for you to understand exactly your opinion on. And of course, some people don't agree with that stuff. So why is that? which brings us to the next part, which is how is the topic understood or misunderstood. So how's this topic often been seen, understood, or misunderstood? So you'll find that a lot of people are advocating for this or that. Who were the heroes, who were the villains of the past? Something I would be aware of. But there are those approaches in history. And you should note that in doing all of this, we should come to understand some of our preconceived notions when coming to the subject. And investigate other opinions of the time or things that people have said over time. And as we do that study and look at things, that is pretty much our historiography. So if you can do these things, you should be able to know most of the stuff if you've done your historiography on the topic, which hopefully you do have that overlap. I do not on mine. So we're going to deal with number 2, which is the questions. And I'm going to sum this up as explore. So this is really where we're going to start digging into the subject and begin to explore the matter of the period and gain an understanding a little more, hopefully holistically, of the subject or topic. So, and in this process, what we're really trying to do is refine. So we want to refine this topic. We want to be able to boil it down. And in fact, I would try it for just investigational purposes or explorational purposes. Try to make this a topic that you can sum up in about a word or two. Searchable. So something we want searchable. Something that what category might this fall into in the basic encyclopedia, or a history of the United States, and being able to have that as just a searchable topic will be able to begin you on that rabbit trail. You begin to find sources, find other histories on the subject, other writings, and that's going to get things going. Now, in that process, there are a few things we want to make note of, and this is kind of getting to what I believe should be like a hermeneutics of history. But we want to ask, context. What is the context? Where does this fall into the larger history? What were the things going on beforehand? The things that came after? Where does it fit in? Is it a social history? Is it a political history? Is it a history of histories? Is it a philosophical history, intellectual history? All different types of history. Understanding the type of historiography that falls into and what things are going on in that period, hopefully within that history, will gain a better understanding of the subject. So let me write that out. Where does the topic where does the topic fit into the larger history? Next. Oh, that's not. Skipping here. The function and role. We want to be able to understand our topic within its function and role in the larger history. What led up to this, what types of things, what type of impacts did it have? Are there rippling effects? Women's suffrage is an easy one. You can kind kind of see how that kind of led into what became ideologies that brought in the civil rights movements. And the civil rights movements are things that have brought in a lot of the gender equality in the workplace and equal pay for equal work, and things that we're still having conversations about today, trying to understand the dynamics of men and women in the same workplace and how do those relationships play out. So, where does that's where? Topic come from or influence. So again, understanding exactly where this topic comes from or what does it influence. And this may be exactly what your thesis is about. You're going to argue the things leading up to a certain period or event in time, or these figures and what they do. Or you might argue the impact that they had. So, and lastly, I'm going to squat down here. I think most importantly, contrast. So the contrast here is what are the alternative views, ideas, or explanations of this particular time in history? We'll put this as ideas or so alternative views, ideas, or explanations. So we talk about civil rights and whether women should have the right to vote. Obviously, not everybody said, yeah, let's do this. What were their views and why did they have that standpoint? So this will inform us a little bit on what our opinion is and what was the opposite of that opinion. So getting an understanding of the subject and even who was misunderstanding, or if we've had a misunderstanding. It's the prerogative of the historian to change their mind. So there's a danger in us not doing that, I believe. So with that, we've got one more thing. This video, you can pause it and write these. Good enough. I always bring my own marker. I should bring my own eraser. So, and our third. Our third is going to be thesis, right? We've looked at the topic, we've looked at our questions, and now we should be able to formulate our thesis. And again, this isn't necessarily something we're going to be able to just sit down and do in a day. We're going to have to go through a whole process of that, investigating and looking at resources, which will probably be our next video. So, but I'm going to summarize this as state. We're pretty much just going to make statements at this point. But you should be able to state and outline your question and working answer. Or thesis. So, by this point we should be able to state and outline our question, whether it's one of those that we had written or whether it's some other question that we have, and our working answer. This is again the argument that we're trying to make as a historian. So, there's a few things that we should be aware of. Well, one thing we should be aware of. More importantly, we should ensure that we have settled make sure that you've settled on a good question, something that you can back that up. You can answer that so what? Why does this even matter kind of question. And if not everybody has to be able to buy into that, but if it's something you're passionate about and you believe that this is an important question, try to boil that down to something really simple in your question. You know, I think that did this, and this have the influence on such and such? You know, did World War II and the end of World War I lead to the ideas presented in sci-fi fantasy written in the early 1930s and 20s? So, and that might be something that you want to argue out. Something to be aware of. Beware of settling on your answer too soon. You don't want to go ahead and have an answer to your question before you even ask it. Again, evaluating your biases, your understanding, and being able to ask yourself, okay, this is what I think was going on. Now my investigation is going to tell me whether it did. If you guys remember, I was looking at Christianity in whether it was primarily in the countrysides to begin with, or predominantly in the cities. And I find that it's hard to argue one or the other. So I'm going to pretty much have to change my explanation or my what I am looking at or arguing in the subject of early Christianity. And there's nothing wrong with changing as we go. In fact, the process is supposed to help us reevaluate. And in fact, these questions and things we should be using often throughout our journey, throughout our exploration, and be going back to that compare and contrast, and reevaluating, saying, okay, so this new information, what does this bring to the table? And does that work with or against my topic, my answer? So that's why we should beware. Don't settle too soon. Let some of the information develop that answer for you. And then lastly, we need to sit down and state or outline our facts and reasons. So this is going to be able to see some of the progression that's laid out, the things that we're picking up. You know, this event gave way to this event, which changed this person's idea, and so on and so forth, and be able to articulate that. They're probably not going to be simple bullet points. You're going to have to probably write a few sentences to really kind of grasp and give the foreground on your facts or your reasons, you know, and why did these support your answer here. So, but at this point, you should be able to lay out pretty much what is your thesis, and then, and at this point, you should be able to develop that proposal. So your professor's probably going to ask for a proposal. Hopefully, you'll be able to get to this point early enough by the time they ask you. So But start with the few questions that we started with, plug your things into the topic that you're interested in, and why you're interested, and then what you want to hopefully glean from that, and then we can go on to this exploration and begin to refine that topic. Aside from that, go to work. Thank you. Oh.